You're listening to Were You Still Talking? All right. Now I'll ask for a moment of silence while I screw up my intro. And again, I have prepared nothing, but I've thought about it. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you for listening in. We're back. This is Joel Aubrick with Were You Still Talking? And today in my studio, I am very happy to have, for the first time ever, my friend Jon Griffin. He is an audio engineer. He taught me a lot of what I know, and then I screwed up the rest. He's a video engineer now, too. He also does producing. He does mixing, mastering, recording, voiceover work, a whole ton of stuff. He's working on a documentary now with a friend, a mutual friend, but more of a friend of his. I just kind of know him. And what else can I say about him? Probably all kinds of things. So welcome so much to the show, Jon.
Hey, Joel. It's excellent to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's really nice. Really nice to have you. Yeah, this is awesome.
It's great.
And it's my 13th episode on the 13th, so that's kind of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really glad you could make this show.
I love that because I feel like 13's kind of been a lucky number for me. And so when you said that, it was like, perfect. This is the perfect show to be on and doing this.
Yeah, that's awesome because I've always felt that way too. And Saturday the 13th will work. Friday the 13th, of course, is the lucky day of the year.
Of course.
Everyone should know that.
But you know what's cool about Saturday the 13th is that you have Friday the 12th, which, I mean,
right.
Which we both know now is a very auspicious day. It's
a very, very auspicious day, and that is because something let's just get into it. Yesterday, we went to something called the Oregon Country Fair.
Yes.
Probably most of the people listening to this have heard of that, but if you haven't, I'll describe it to you. No, it's not really possible. Doesn't work. I can't describe it to you. It has, in my cynical times when I I don't need to go this year. It's like a big Saturday market. It's nothing like a big Saturday market. So,
Not at all.
It's really awesome that Jon had not been. And I was like, yeah, well, it's great you're coming up to do the podcast. Maybe we could go to the fair. I don't know.
And I was just like, yes, absolutely. Let's go to the fair. This is great. I've never done the fair. Let's do the fair. And you've, in all fairness, you've told me about the fair and have painted different pictures at different times. But it sounded like a lot of fun. And It sounded like there was potential for fun and even potential for more fun.
And it's good. And I always I often paint cynical pictures as I've lived here a long time. And sometimes I'm not in the mood for the fair. But this was totally, to take somebody new there, which I probably haven't done since I took Heidi there many years back. That's always a fun thing. And just to alter our mood for the day and let's go to the fair. I left my phone in my pocket, which is always a challenge. Luckily I had a friend with me that took a few snaps. But another thing about it is I could take pictures all day long. You'll never know what the fair is.
Right. It's even the pictures that I took. A friend of mine said, "Hey, can you send me some pictures?" And I did. And I'm like, yeah, this doesn't capture it at all. This isn't the spirit of the fair, the sense of people. And even though, we had selective interactions with people, it's still, there was just this general vibe there of good vibes, of people being good to one another. And that's what I loved more than anything else, was that you could be walking down this dirt path amongst all these shops and booths that are set up selling bizarre hats and hemp wallets and different things like that. And there would be somebody walking down in full-on Mad Max Burning Man garb, and you'd think, okay, this guy doesn't want to be interacted with at all. And then they'd turn and their face would just light up, and it was like, oh, awesome, man! What a beautiful spirit to be coming into the woods with. So,
and it really is that. I guess we should explain a little more in case you haven't been to the country fair. It is in the middle of the woods. It's this giant happening in the middle of the woods. There's lots of handcrafted goods of all variety. There, food. There's literally hundreds of musicians, and dozens of them are playing at the same time, which is one of the most confused. What? No, how can that happen? Well, one, it's huge. It's huge. We have no idea really how much of the fair we saw. I mean, I still haven't looked at the map to go, well, what did we see?
I haven't either, but it felt like we walked around nearly the entire thing, and I'm thinking we probably maybe did a quarter of it. I mean,
that is my kind of feeling, is that maybe we did. Maybe we did. I mean, we could have been 2/3, and it still, because of how things work, you're still only seeing a little bit. There's a lot to see. And, I mean, the booths are interesting and all, but it's the people and activities of the fair and the magical things that happen. And like you were saying, when you're walking through the crowd, it's very unique to walk through a crowd that big. And Friday's crowd is a little bit smaller than Saturdays and Sundays. But to walk through a crowd of people that huge and just feel like almost everyone is just really into what they're doing and into the fair. And happy to be there, and happy to see you, although they don't know you at all.
They don't know you at all, but they pass by with a smile, and everyone's wishing everyone else have a great fair, have a good fair, and it was just really good vibes. I loved the sort of hippie shire nature of all of it, of walking around, and even you, when I was riding up here and you sent me a text, you're like, you hippie, and it is like some hippie culture, but in a really accessible, easy, fun environment and way to interact with all that. So I loved it. I will definitely be back.
And that's so awesome. That makes it so much more fun that you were really into it. And of course, my last guest, Jeff Johnston, we talked a lot about the show he does, and as soon as I hit stop on the recording, he starts telling me this cool story of the fair.
Now that we're off mic.
Now that we're off, he wasn't even thinking of it that way. It just like, well, let me tell you another story. So that's cool, because he got to help rebuild a booth, which he was very excited about, and sounded like fun. And if anyone needs volunteers next year, my friend Jon Griffin's available. He's smiling and nodding, right?
Yes. Email in the link below, yes.
Exactly.
And it was especially nice to also feel your change in perspective of getting involved with it and going and having a new experience, even though you've been there before. The fair apparently celebrated its 50th year this year.
Yeah, which is really stunning. I still can't believe I'm over 50.
And you were at the very first one.
Yeah, not so much.
You were actually born in the fair, right?
Guy
you
there.
came out and landed in the mud, and you said, "I am the fair baby."
Oh my gosh! No, far from it. Yeah, I will say my first experience was as a teenager, and it was a very different fair at that time. It was similar as far as what you see, but it wasn't, because there was a lot more free-form stuff going on. It wasn't quite as family-friendly. Now it's far more geared towards family. As far as I know, that's the daylight hours, because the rumor is that things change a little after the lights go down, after the lights are dimmed.
Freaks come out at night.
Yeah.
Well, the freaks were out during the day, too.
There's plenty of freaks out in the day, but they were lovely type of freaks.
Yeah. Really nice, really nice.
So much going on. It's hard to
and even though there were kids
around
in there, it's because I was just in Paris, right, and having a conversation about children and the environments they grow up in, and the way that in certain parts of the United States we homogenize and sort of create this cloistered, safe environment to present to children of the world and of adult life and what being responsible is. As opposed to, like in France, where literally every corner, and in Paris, Bruce and I were walking around and we were noting that this is what kids grow up with. This is their imagery of adults, of people every day, just sitting in cafes and having drinks and smoking cigarettes and long conversations and
all bad mathing America, right?
Not all bad mathing America. A little bit of that maybe, but no, they're
just like here.
really, really just a different sort of culture, and that's what I appreciated about the fair is that it's not that. Oh, everything's perfect and you're doing great and just this, we're going to kind of keep this energy right here so that the kids feel motivated. It's free from that, and the kids could be hippie in their own way too and interact with. I mean, we saw kids walking around involved and didn't necessarily have their parents there, but people didn't feel like they had to tame themselves for the kids. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It does. And I kind of had that thought for a brief moment as I was walking through the crowd, and there's all kinds of different strollers and wagons that kids are riding in,
right?
Infants riding in, and young children. And I kind of thought, this is a really cool experience for them because they're so like this. This is an experience that could that is so open, and there's like so many different things for them to see, and a lot of it is even for kids that they can play with and touch and feel. But just to see that many, especially in small towns in Oregon, you don't always see a ton of culture, and there seem to be right. A lot of different cultures mixed in, just a lot of different things. Like there, in the past, I think part of this is because people are into costumes now. In the past, the costumes were more like free-form kind of painted hippies, I'll say. But now it's everything. Like there's every kind of creature you can think of. And again, you kind of have to go. If you want to catch the fair this year, oh shit, I'm sorry, you can't. No chance, it's over. But
today.
You can go next year. This podcast won't be up probably before the fair is done. It might be. You can rush out there late night Sunday. It's really something to see that you can't. There's no way I could describe it on a podcast.
Well, there is a culture. I love that you were saying culture. There's a culture of inclusivity, and
yes.
Everyone is welcome. Like literally, everyone is welcome, and it really tends to keep cool vibe people coming in, as opposed to the exclusivity or separatism that we can often experience here in this country, or even in the world,
or even in the world. That's true.
Yeah,
even in the world, it's a thing that
well, and that kind of cultural awareness of being accepting, and you don't necessarily have to go so polarized as to say, yes, that gets my thumbs up, or no, that gets my thumbs down. It can just simply be an acceptance of what's walking around you. And if you do pass somebody that looks like Mad Max and they smile at you, cool, man.
Cool.
You have that one moment that you can share with somebody, and that's what I loved about it. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing we both noticed is that the moments you have with people, literally just little teeny moments, seem to be like a lot more weighty when you're out there. It's like you have connections happen really quickly, and that you would never. Your 3-second relationship, for instance.
And ain't that just like life, right? Where we look for stability and answers in these longer patterns in our lives, whether they're jobs or a sense of spirituality or whatever it might be, but really what we tend to gravitate to find meaning and to have attachment are these moments of interacting with people. And I think so, at least. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a big part of being not only in the now moment, but also being aware and respectful of your past and where you're hoping to move your future.
Well, and that kind of is a big part of being in the now, though, is realizing that the moments you're having with family and friends that you've known your whole life, or someone you just meet, what you want to spend your whole life with, are not the only are not the only important thing. It might be just as important that moment you have with someone that is brief and very temporary, but it's still as far as shaping your world, as far as your experience, it could be just as important. I've heard that many times, that the small moments are important too. It's like a big part of, and if you go as far as like everything happens for a reason, if you believe in this crazy idea that everything that happens is part of your experience, either you planned it ahead of time or it's unfolding for you, and it's unfolding to teach you your life lessons. So that would mean that every experience it's just as important.
Is for you. Is actually something that can contribute to which way are you going to go on the spectrum of your being. I might be going off the deep end here, but
that's good.
I've been talking with a friend of mine who's really deep into astrology, and we talk about the ways that different sort of astrological forecasts say, well, it could be this kind of day, or it could be this kind of day. And largely depending on, like, if you look into that certain signs have certain characteristics, and if you believe all of that stuff, that you could be of more of this positive mindset or this sort of perspective on life, or maybe not. Maybe you're going dark. You're going to the shadow side of things, if you will, right? And what I think is interesting about all of that is all the in-between that happens. Because we're all complex human beings. We all have bad days. We all have fantastic, wonderful, we deserve this day to be walking out at nature and in the country fair. But we also have those days that just, it's hard to get motivated. And the kind of language that we keep for ourselves and talk to ourselves and reinforce within ourselves when we're in that state can have an impact, just like the way can we pay attention to what we're saying to ourselves, the way we're interacting, the kind of language we take on when we're having fantastic days, like yesterday.
Right. And it gets a little harder now that Mercury's in Gatorade.
Mercury soaked in Gatorade. Yeah, I don't know. I might have lost my path on that, but
no, that made sense to me. That little cartoon cracked me up.
Yeah, it was a good cartoon. But you were saying before, like the little moments. It did remind me of. Did I ever tell you about the time when I was traveling long time ago? Went backpacking and got on a train in Greece to go to Turkey, and I got on the train. It's a 17-hour or like 16, 15-hour train ride, whatever it is. Got on the train and shared a cabin with this young Syrian man who sat on the bench across from me, and he had a bag of tomatoes, and I had a bag of nuts. And so it didn't take long for us to decide to share and just start talking about life and get into the mix of all of it. And it was one of the greatest experiences I remember of the two of us literally hanging out of this train car window as the Greek mountainsides are going by, and we're eating tomatoes, and the juice is just dripping on our faces and flying back. And
wow.
And talking about everything under the sun. That train ride, another story I think I've told you another time, but ended up that friends of mine were on that train in a different portion of that train, saw those friends when we got off the train, and the Syrian man and I were talking, and my friends came up as if to expect an introduction, like, oh, this is so-and-so. And in that moment, the man and I looked at each other, realizing we had never introduced ourselves. We never said, oh, my name is, or anything.
Oh, that's wild. You just kind of skipped that formality. And
we just said, this is our period of time, and let's just dig in. And
nice.
And we still didn't in that moment. And we had a moment of like, oh, right. Never. It was before the time of Facebook or any of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So it was just an acknowledgement of the moment and saying goodbye and taking that. And that's been like such a great experience in my life, and I was so happy to have that and remember that to this day. And yet it was such a brief experience.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Just taking a moment. Let that sink in.
Am I? Let's see. What can I? I've been reading this book, "The Great Work of Your Life" by this guy Stephen Cope.
Oh yes.
It's all about Dharma, and it largely takes you through the Bhagavad Gita, which is the story of Arjuna and Krishna. But there's a quote that the guy has in the beginning of the book. And I did bring this book.
Awesome. Wow, look, you brought something.
Well, it's funny because I brought it because I'm
great.
just like, okay, I'll read a little bit at night.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I read it as a bookmark was actually, I took one of Bruce's little pieces of paper. And I wrote down, I just started writing notes. And he had this one quote from a Gnostic gospel that was, if you bring forth what is in you, it will save you. If you do not bring forth what is in you, it will destroy you. And that whole idea is pretty profound, especially the it will destroy you part.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that I've felt in my life, obviously, if you bring forth what's showing up for you, you express whatever music's in you, you decide to do a podcast, you make a film, right? You get creative. You say, I want to do this this website, whatever it might be. Then you're engaged in what's really driving you. But the idea that if you don't bring that forth, it just kind of goes away or sits in the background might not necessarily be true. The idea that it could actually be part of what's undermining you or destroying you because you're not honoring what's coming up, right? What's the flowers in your life that are growing, if I can say that, on this hippie.
No, you can't say flowers on a podcast.
Okay, sorry, no flowers. That's an interesting idea to me.
Mm-hmm.
That as perhaps a way to encourage people to really do what they feel called to do, no matter what challenge it is.
Right. Yeah, it is a very interesting thought. It's sort of I don't know if this relates at all or not, but I wrote down dual personalities and other people's perceptions. Recently, I was actually listening to a speech about something called microdosing. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. Microdosing, which is taking very small amounts of what they call hallucinogens, namely mostly hallucinogens. I think that's the only thing they talk about, in order for their health benefits. And hallucinogens have not been studied for health benefits because Nixon decided they should be illegal so he could pick on hippies. But that's a whole different story. Look it up. It's true. Google it. There are a lot of drugs that have been outlawed, not because of their health risk, because they have a very low or almost non-existent health risk, but because of political problems. But since I don't cover political stuff on this podcast, you can look that up, and yeah, it's not a rule, it's just an idea. So one thing he talked about for a long time first was how everyone has dual personalities, which I think is something you can see when you go to the fair. Everyone has different faces they present at different times, and it's one of the best examples was You're coming home from work. Someone cut you off. You're pissed off. You wanna do damage to something. You wanna hit the wall or something. You walk in the door and there's your dog, and your dog doesn't know that person at all. Never seen that kind of person. So instantly you turn in to the person your dog knows, who's the miracle man that opens the door, and that I think that's also really, I don't know, prevalent when you do something like you go to the fair, because you see a lot of these people are not walking around like this every day. They're putting on a costume, but when they put on the costume, they put on a whole this is a different personality today.
Right.
It's really interesting.
It's like free license, right?
Right.
It gives somebody a gateway to express themselves in that way, that they feel that best resembles who they are. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know. I can't speak with any authority about anything, but definitely not gender assignment roles or anything like that. But that seems to be a big part of what is going on there, is that people just feel obviously like they identify more when they get to express themselves in this particular way.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I guess that's very true. Yeah, it's a different way to express yourself. And that also goes along, and I find this very interesting. This concept has been introduced to me recently, and I'll qualify this by saying no, neither one of us are experts, but we're on the podcast, so there. And so another thing is how everyone sees you differently, and I find that very intriguing. Like, not just how you show up to people yourself as a different personality, which I think is also true, but everyone's perception of you may be different, and probably is. You know what I mean? It's like the people at work probably have a completely different perception of you than the people that you had a multi-year relationship with in 3 seconds at the fair.
Like
it's true. It happened.
The green you see isn't the same green I see, man.
Kind of like that.
Well, in a way, yeah. But yes, and what I think, I'm just thinking about it now, what's interesting about that is the way that that sometimes we place our sense of identity in the way that we are perceived by other people.
Oh yeah, and that right. That goes right along with exactly.
That's like the opposite side of a sense of self-awareness, I guess, right? Or maybe it is a part of self-awareness of, right? It's got to be a piece of self-awareness, because you become aware of the way you're showing up in the world. But
that exactly. I think that's a big part of self-awareness. If you become more aware that people see you differently, it can maybe make you think about things a little bit.
Definitely.
And, do you want to be seen in this way or that way? So, I mean, often we can't really control that entirely, because everyone's going to see things differently. I mean, that's what's so ridiculous about the world. They should all see things my way. But, you can't really control how people see you, but you can to some extent. I mean, you can... do your best to... In
case you were ever unsure about anything, if you need the answers in the correct way to look at things, come to Joel.
Were you still talking? It'll tell you everything. Yes. I'm going to open a self-coaching.
Exactly.
What's that called?
Know you're wrong, do it my way. Right.
That's it.
The online mastery course, yes. Become a master like Joel. Yeah, but I think that's a really fascinating piece to think about, to be aware of in life, that people will often see what they are maybe even ready to see, right? Like, I mean, certain people, you can only learn things when you're ready to learn them.
Oh, right.
Right?
Right. That's another interesting point.
And so there's
especially life lessons. I mean, I think you can learn Pro Tools free anytime.
Pretty much.
But but things that go a little deeper than that, you kind of have to be ready for.
Come on, man. What goes deeper than Pro Tools free? Really? Come on.
Pro Tools HD.
Exactly. Yes. That's right.
We're getting a little nerdy. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. That's why we're laughing.
We're teching out, and everyone's what are they talking about? These are audio recording programs for anyone who gives. What? Okay, sorry. And you were.
I lost the train of thought now. Learning, right? Because it goes to the receiving the transmitting and receiving, right? The something that's coming out and coming your way and being able to receive it, right? And sometimes, like, whether that's in, I'm going to go off the deep end here, but in relationship, right? If somebody's not in a place that they can really receive relationship or love, it might make it very hard for them to interact with somebody who's trying to give them love, right? And
right,
or food, or a job, or a sense of community, or anything like that, right? Because, I mean,
absolutely,
total blanket statement here, right? But, like, I think that a lot of people grow up experiencing what they experience and just learning to imitate, right? And learning to, like, take in and see how things are done. And then they reach a point where they realize, no, I can say no. And they need to exercise and practice their rebellion. No, like, this is not the choice I'm going to make. So they can hold sort of boundaries for themselves. And then they get to a point where they try to find a balance within all of that and move into professional careers and different lifestyles that is a combination between what shows up, what's available, and the choices they make. And
yeah, if I can, I think some of that is not just the way we grow, but the way we're also, certain things are pounded at us. Certain things are thrown at us that this is the way you should be. This is what you should be doing. This is what you should be liking, especially if you take it into advertising. And now advertising is everywhere.
Right.
The advertising is so many places, people don't even realize that they're being advertised to. No advertising on this show yet, but if you would like to. No.
This moment brought to you by Avid Pro Tools. Avid Pro Tools, the choice of professionals.
Hey, don't say that. They're not paying me.
Oh, sorry. No.
Scramble.
Rewind.
So, damn it! Now I trained my loss of thought. So. Oh, I'm talking about programming. I'm talking about how we are programmed by, not just by advertisers, by everything, by parents, by schools we go to, all these different things. And at some point we do try and break the programming. One big thing that I see that's true with is you mentioned dieting, that having a healthy diet is something that a lot of people are trying to do. In actuality, they've been trying to do this for a long, long time. There's hundreds of thousands of books about what you should be eating. There are more now than I think there have ever been in a lifetime. But having said that, you don't need a book to change your diet choices. Just deciding to have a healthy diet is something that you have to be ready for. It has to be that time in your life when you're going to say, oh man, I really should start treating myself a little better. Eating McDonald's every day is fun and everything, but it's literally killing me. And there's, like, people can't tell. It's the same with giving up certain things that may be unhealthy for you, especially addictions. It's very hard to tell somebody that until they are ready. You're staring at my screen.
No, I'm
That's
just
fine.
looking at the...
Aren't those cool?
Yeah, they're pictures of your studio.
They're ancient.
No, that's awesome, man. That's cool. Yeah, but it's. I was thinking as you were saying that of when you get a new car, right? Or you're looking to get a new car and you've got something in mind, and suddenly you start seeing that car everywhere. Right, I think that happens.
That's literally happening to me right now.
On so many. That's the car I'm interested in. But I think that happens on so many levels. So, like with diet, right? When you decide, or when you start reaching that internal point of switching to, right, I'm going to change the way I look at the world. I'm going to change the way I eat. I'm going to change the way I do this. You start noticing that, right? You start noticing, oh yeah, that's actually an option I could have. I could go to get the organic food from this place, or that restaurant's open. Oh, cool! Look, they have locally sourced meat and.
Like I didn't know Albertsons had organic foods. Wow, amazing! Suddenly, it is.
Suddenly, you start saying they do. I'm presuming they do. Yeah,
I think they do. Yeah. It's a little aisle, about as big as this iPad.
Are they sponsoring this?
No, they're not. I don't even know if they still exist. Do they?
But, we went last night. We went to that amazing, amazing Mexican restaurant.
Oh yeah, what's that called?
Was it? Circa 1960.
Circa 1960.
No, Cocina.
Cocina.
Cocina 1960.
Cocina 1960. I am going to tell people to go there because
in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, in Eugene, Oregon. It's on 18th and Willamette. 18th Willamette. It's an amazing New Mexican place. I don't care that they're not sponsoring the program. It's just a recommendation.
Yeah.
If you like Mexican food and you've lived here for a long time, and maybe you've come from somewhere south of here, or just about anywhere, and there was good Mexican food there, this is great. Homemade, very reasonably priced, locally sourced.
Right.
Anyway,
it's a family.
Sorry,
that owns,
I interrupted.
It's a family. No, it's all good. That's exactly
business.
what I was going to say. It's a family-owned business. They home make everything. They make their own tortillas. They get all, or not all, but maybe a lot of. It seems like they get a lot of locally sourced and fresh, natural ingredients for all of their food, and that makes a difference. And that shows up in everything they do because it just becomes about making certain choices, right? And going with the nicer plates rather than cheap plates, right?
Right.
And and I think I like to look at what are the practices in my life? What am I doing on a regular basis, and sort of what sort of practices am I doing that feel good, that bring about the kind of change that I want to have within myself. And, forget everybody else for now. What can I do just to kind of take care of myself and be happy and healthy within my own skin, right? And often that brings up so many points in life of, oh, okay, this point of discomfort that I have with this, it's something that actually needs some attention because I need to grow beyond what this is, right? A certain habit or tendency. And that's where I think people can move towards overcoming addictions and things like that. Because you move to a place where you could say, oh, right, this isn't working for me anymore. This getting up and smoking pot every day or whatever it is doesn't work for me, or drinking all the time doesn't work for me.
And that's a hard one because people in the middle of addiction, most of the stories I hear, whether personal stories or impersonal stories, are either someone with a terrible addiction has a very, 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 very low point, or they do just wake up one day and decide, I got to change something. Something comes. What I'm trying to say is it never seems to work when someone tries to change them. It's like, it's got to be their decision. That's an extreme example, but I think that's true with most things. It's very difficult when, if you're trying to change someone else or someone else is trying to change you, it's got to be, you've got to get to the point where, okay, I think I need to change this. I think that, Old Spice is just not working anymore. I should go with something newer.
Go get that organic, locally sourced deodorant from the co-op. That's great. And I'll speak from my own personal experience. Definitely, I've felt that challenge in relationship, as you know, because you've heard a lot of my rants, not on this program,
we could do a whole podcast.
We could do a whole podcast on John's relationships. On the way that I've certainly felt like, I'm getting benefits from, I'm grateful to be in this relationship or have this experience because I'm learning this and I'm growing in this way. And the way that sometimes that makes me even more accepting of things that really don't work for me. And
just as often in a relationship, whether it's a male-female relationship or some other relationship, I've had a lot of, my biggest learning experiences. I know that anyone who's into the woo-woo world has heard this a million times, but really the biggest learning things are when things go really bad. in a relationship, and you're just like, oh my, what am I doing? I got to get out of this. Or change this. Not necessarily get out of it. Call, right? That wake up call that makes it, and then maybe, usually for me, it's a while later that I went, oh, okay, that was probably important, because without that, I might not be here doing a podcast or whatever, which is true too. Without, if you want to go a little further, what I believe when I'm feeling healthy, I don't always. I mean, when you're depressed, it's hard to believe this. But the way I feel right now is, everything that I've ever done has led me to doing a podcast with my friend Jon Griffin in this massive, castle that I built deep within the inskirts of Eugene.
This is unbelievable, man. Is this medieval?
Isn't it? It's wow. It's even older. No, it's a little bit older than that. It's just after the Viking era.
Wow. Yeah, this is really incredible.
It's something.
These arches they blow me away. I feel the antiquity.
It's really something.
It's all the stained glass too.
I would put out pictures, but it's there are copyright issues or trademark issues with the stonemasons. That's what it is. Yes.
You know the way those stonemasons, those contracts, they're written in stone.
My snare is, I can almost reach it. Jeez.
Sorry, man. It was right there.
Oh, cheese whiz.
It was like, there's a can, there's the cracker. Just put them together. Come on. Make it happen.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Okay, so why did you, and I know this a little bit, but why did you decide to do a podcast?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And yeah, I did tell this on an earlier podcast, but it's always worth telling again because, we've got some time left. So I was feeling like really, really down, extremely down for the first time in my life, kind of thinking suicidal thoughts and thinking suicidal thoughts enough that I was like, and I'm sure other people go through this too, that I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to tell anyone I'm thinking this because that could interrupt if I decide to, go through with it. Right. That could bring on some intervention, and not looking for that. So if you're in that space, I'm very sorry, and realize that one day you could be sitting in a room having a podcast after going to the country fair. It just, you have to stay alive to do that. I also have these, so I was very, very down. That was from years of back pain and having to be basically on medication to sleep. So I had sleep deprivation on top of that because when you take medication, I'm sorry, you don't sleep. That still causes sleep deprivation. There are several sources you can Google and watch YouTube videos about that. But so there was that, and then suddenly I started having these bizarre eye problems. So suddenly I had dizziness and eye fatigue just on a massive scale. It was almost vertigo, but not quite that intense. I wasn't needing to throw up all the time. But I couldn't play my flight simulator. And so that was one of the last, relaxing things I had left in a way. I now suddenly I could barely watch TV. It was hard to look at a computer. It was hard to even read a book because reading is another thing that I absolutely love. So I'm like, well, I've heard of podcasting. So I started listening to podcasts actually on YouTube because a lot of podcasts are on YouTube. And I heard a podcast with, now I'm forgetting his name, son of a bitch. I heard a podcast with the English guy. No, not Joe.
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand. Russell Brand was talking about the Iceman. And so Russell Brand was having a interview with this guy called the Iceman, who's a totally insane gentleman who jumps into ice in order to cure everything. So I wasn't about to jump into ice to cure everything, but I thought, well, this is an amazing moment. I mean, just the stuff that they were talking about. They were talking about curative powers. They were talking about Russell Brand's journey, who has had quite a journey since his addiction. He's one thing he's kind of changed his addiction from drugs, alcohol, and sex to spirituality. Right. He knew very little about spiritual things, so now his journey is kind of on the path of, you know, what's real and what's not, what is going to help people more. So I thought, well, that's amazing. So then I watched the same guy, the Iceman, on Joe Rogan's podcast, because I'd heard a lot about Joe Rogan's podcast. I didn't know at the time that it's the largest podcast in the world. So I turned, and the same thing, Joe Rogan is an interesting character, and he is a character, and he's, you know, sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not. But his interview with the Iceman was very sweet. Like, you know, he was blown away by the guy. He seemed very genuine. He had a lot of really good information. So I thought, oh, that's cool. And then then I started listening to Joe Rogan a bit. Now, I'll admit that I turn off some of the podcasts because they're just annoying or full of bad information. But he admits that. But, you know, not everything he says is true. So anyway, he was interviewing Kevin Smith, who's absolutely amazing. I love Kevin Smith, the director, actor, but he won't say that, writer, who has a podcast also. And they were saying, Kevin was saying, gee, Joe, this is amazing how much money you've made on your voice. You've done so well having a podcast. And Joe's like, anyone can do this. It's not a big deal. I've just been doing it a long time, but anyone can do a podcast. And Kevin Smith was like, yeah, I guess anyone can. And I went, all right, I'll try it. So that was my path to here. The amazing thing is that people like yourself and just a lot of the friends and family around me have been amazingly supportive. They're listening to it. Unfortunately, that's the only people listening to it, but still, it's enough for now. And I just got a call from my cousin Victor.
Victor.
No, we're not actually Russian, but that name always sounds. My cousin Victor calls me. I don't think he's ever called me that I can remember. And
so great.
He just, you know, it was a really fun call. It was really nice. I hope you're listening to the podcast now, Victor. He said he wanted to be on my podcast, although, you know, he's like 6 years older than me. He didn't exactly know what a podcast was, and he didn't you know, he of course had never listened to the podcast, but he just was so like, that's great that you're doing that. You know, you always keep trying to do new creative things, and so, you know, it's so awesome.
Somebody else reflecting back to you the way they see you, and
good point,
and like how good that feels, you know, and how nice. And there goes your computer.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying.
And how nice it is when you're open to receiving that, right? And that somebody's even open and willing to say that.
Well, and when it's nice, because you know there are occasions when someone reflects back to you, you know, that you don't like, but it's that's the lesson. Well, when you're getting something that you're like, oh my God, where's this coming from? And it's a good idea to sit and think, where is it coming from?
I don't want to interrupt your thought at all. If there was more you wanted to, Victor, you were talking about Victor, and just the support you're getting in this podcast and in what you're doing, and in the change that you made in the way you were living, right? And that you felt like you were in a depressed state.
Yeah, I was. And the podcast has helped a lot. I actually, the thing that's helped me the most is getting a little foamy thing for my mattress. So that I have been off. I've been able to sleep and been off. What am I trying to say? Prescription drugs. I don't want to lie here. I've been off prescription drugs for, I don't know, almost 6 months now, I think. Yes, I do want to experiment with microdosing. It's very intriguing. That's a bit of a subject skip, but I did want to mention that.
Talk about that.
Okay, I did want to mention that the guy that I was listening to, his name was Jim Fadiman. I know nobody looks at the links, but I'll put a link just in case you care to see. And he was talking about something called multiplicities and personalities, and I thought that was very interesting. And one of the, well, really the main he does unscientific studies where he just asks everyone who's microdosing to write him and tell him, what are you doing? How's it affecting you? And the research is showing that, I mean, the main thing it does is it rewires your brain a little bit. So it helps immensely with people having problems like certain types of depression, certain types of anxiety, not all types, PTSD. It's helped a lot of people with that. And then there are several other things that people have reported that it's funny because he says, I mean, it very much might be true. We don't know because the scientific world can't test it because it's right now been demonized and is so that because it's a class 1 drug, it can't be tested by science without a lot of money and push, and no one wants to do that for a drug that's not going to make them money. But anyway, it's interesting. The idea is very interesting, and so I wondered if rewiring my brain would work for what seems like a mental problem. What am I trying to say? A neurological problem. Although I've been to 6 doctors and no one knows exactly what's going on, but it seems neurological to me. So, yeah. That was one thing. And you've actually, I think, known more people that have microdosed and had more experience with that yourself.
It's true. Yeah. I have. Yes, I have indeed. It's might not be for everyone. And the thing that I have noticed with talking to different people about microdosing and the idea of possibly having experiences or doing something physically, making a change to yourself that might not be as perceivable as a full throttle experience.
Experience, yeah, that's a good word for it. Experience, and just
the subtle changes that can bring, and it's in the way of. For example, if you just start, food, and you said sleep, you said the pad that you are sleeping on now has helped a lot with your relief.
Yes.
And I mean, I think food and sleep are 2 huge major aspects of life that somehow get largely ignored by people. Diet, people feel like, okay, maybe I'll work that out once I have this other stuff worked out, right? Sleep, okay, well, I'm busy. I'm staying up late at night, and I need to do this, and the way we kind of deplete those 2 areas, I think a lot of people do. I mean, there are.
I know somebody who at least used to deplete that area of sleep.
Who's that? So I'm
in favor of work.
I'm talking from experience because I have long been a burn the candle at both ends. Just work as much as possible. And there's been a lot of situations where it's like, okay, I'm going to have a 16, 20-hour day today, and I'm going to have one tomorrow and all week. And it's like, okay, just make the adjustment to do that. And it's worked at times, and it definitely doesn't work at other times. And I still occasionally have late nights, but I think sleep is so important.
And that's really good to hear you say, because you do have a lot less late nights, and it shows.
Thank you.
It shows in how I perceive your personality.
Well, thank you for sharing that perception. Yeah,
and I've the less I slept, the more I kind of would see, talk about things coming to you showing up when you're thinking about them. The less sleep I got, the more I would see how important sleep was.
Right.
And there's actually, the sleep research is very new because it's only been going on about 50 years, and scientific...
Sleep has only been going on for 50 years?
Oh, yeah.
For as long as the country fair?
People did not sleep before the country fair. That's really what created,
man.
Once the country fair came along, people were like, oh, I can sleep. The research is still very young,
right.
Sleep research, and they're discovering new things all the time. And, every other day a new thing comes out on a big show like the Today Show, which means that it's been around for 20 years, and new ideas come out.
This just in. Podcasting's been around for 25 years.
Exactly. But more and more researchers are showing, how important sleep is. Not just the benefits, but the dangers of not getting enough sleep. And America, I guess, as a country, is very sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And I mean, this could answer a lot of questions. This could, if people were wondering why America's where it is,
just tune into this podcast.
Sleep more.
Just sleep more. But I think that, that's great advice, right?
It really is.
So in my life, if I can have a moment here, I made a big change in my life a couple of years ago and moved from Los Angeles. Lots of electricity, lots of happening, everything going on, to a very small town in southern Oregon that I love. And I love the change. And it's been a little challenging at times to completely make all of those changes. But it amplified how much, especially city living, industry, technology, is this constant experience of pushing more information in and shining flashlights on our phones into our faces and depleting our internal melatonin levels, right? And our body creates melatonin from the dark, and we live in these environments where we keep the lights on till late at night. We watch television screens. We have phones and tablets in front of us, all that are just shining light into our body. And talk about programming, man. That's a big way to program ourselves out of sleep and out of actually believing that we need sleep. And that's something that I would support completely. That I think more people in large, but definitely in this country, could honor some more sleep.
Absolutely, and actually, that's being shown as one of the biggest reasons America is sleep deprived. We already were, because the majority of us live in cities, and even still the majority, far more than 50% live in large cities. The city that never sleeps is a fun slogan, and it's cool if you're up and drinking, past 2:00. Then that's fun. But the downside is the city never turns off its lights. And that's a big thing I noticed living here as opposed to living in L.A., because I also lived in L.A. for 11 years. Now that I'm here, even though I'm still in a city, and it's not a small community, you can't see all the stars like when you're in the real dark. But it's so much darker. When we shut the lights off at night, it's like spooky dark. And that just didn't, except for the moon. And which is another thing. When the moon is bright, I notice.
Natural circadian rhythm, right?
Yeah. But when the moon is bright in LA, you don't really notice. There's too much light. It's not making a big enough difference.
You're seeing it through that grayish blue haze.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't, it will light up your bedroom somewhat, but not like when there's less light. And so even before the advent of the use of computers and cell phones and all those things, we were still being bombarded with light. So now it's like epidemic proportions. I have really bad habit that way. I look at my phone before I go to sleep. A lot of times, it's not good for sleep. Really, it's from what I understand. I'm not a scientist, but that's what the scientists are saying. So and the more you look at if you can take time to turn off your phone, I know is hard. We're all addicted. That's my addiction, besides coffee. It's tough.
Coffee. Let's talk about that. Can we have some coffee?
Back to coffee talk.
Right. And a good friend of mine in LA, we talk about that all the time, how the challenge of waking up in the morning, turning the alarm on your phone off, right, and boom, there it is, your feed right away, right? What's happening in the news today?
Oh, yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah.
Look at that, I got 24 likes on this, Instagram post or whatever it is, and the way you just boom, plug in, turn on right away. And there's little transition time in that. And I think that's
very true. Yeah.
I'd go so far as to say, we going back to what I said before, I think we largely learn by imitation, and we've created technology, or we've been handed technology, whatever you want to believe, that that is binary based, right? That has essentially two states, one and zero, and we are learning different ways to process our world and our information in that way, whether it's thumbs up, thumbs down, on or off, right? That we're processing. We actually, as human beings, are the processors that are happening for the human psyche, I'll say, that's being forever changed by this technology that we have. In some ways, in a great way, because we have now worldwide awareness of what's happening around the world instantaneously. We can see what's happening around the world. We can say, oh, okay, those religious beliefs or those ideas about women are not the ideas that I've grown up with, that I've been fed, that my culture seems to have. And it can be mind-opening. At the same time, some of this information is washing away some of the smaller cultural values of our world. And so as human beings, I think, I'm just kind of going on a rant here, sorry.
I love rants. Then I don't have to say anything.
Exactly. As human beings, we're doing all of this processing. We're taking this in. And in a way, I think we're kind of trying to emulate or imitate binary behavior of like,
that's interesting.
How quickly can we
turn back on?
And how can we turn off?
And how can we turn off?
Just can I get myself to be that kind of rhythmic machine?
I'm hearing a clicking in my phone.
Sorry, man. That's mine.
That was you. No, that's very true. It's interesting. That's the one side that I've been able to do. I don't touch my phone until a certain time in the morning.
Great.
So I give myself time, and when I catch myself going, oh man, I gotta see, I'm getting this and this is that, and then I go, wait a minute. It'll still be there.
Yes.
On that hour that you said you were going to give yourself, those messages will still be there. This information that you think you need right now, I swear. It's been true, ladies and gentlemen. It's still there. Yeah, all your emails are still there, no matter how many times you check them a day. That's another thing that I think is really not good for people's minds. It's almost like we're creating ADD. Is that what it's called? Yeah. It's almost like we're creating this in more and more people. Because we think we have to keep up with something for some reason. With me, I don't have a lot going on, so it's easier. I understand that there are people with, if not multiple jobs, multiple duties in their job, and they think that they need to stay on top of everything. But the reality of it is there too as well. If you're in a traditional job, you're probably only getting paid for when you're going to the office. Right. So stop doing that work when you're not. Right. If you're in a less traditional job, then it gets much harder because you have to make those hours. You have to set them for yourself. So that gets much harder. But guess what? You can. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's something you can do. It really makes a huge difference because, you're still interrupting your sleep if you jump up and start looking at things that quickly.
No doubt.
And especially, I mean, some people jump up and look at work. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people do. But other people jump up and look at Twitter.
Well, that's I think,
literally
the volume suck, right?
Yeah, that's going to kill your brain.
More people get up and look at the social network that comes filtering through a 4-inch screen, 5-inch screen, whatever, than being connected to the world around them. Right?
Yes.
It's a different kind of connection to the world around them.
Right.
I won't say that it's not a connection, but again, going back to the country fair, that's what makes that experience so great. And, we talked about it. I did take some pictures, but I had my phone in my backpack for a good solid chunk of time, and it felt great.
For at least half the time, which was great.
It felt great not to have it. Right? Yeah. Not to be able to just pull it out and take pictures of everything because I wanted to. I mean, there were the first...
Because you do want...
The first statue we saw of the giant metal mesh frog that had that big tongue that rolled out and kids playing with its legs and, it's just walking through this field. It's like, that's
incredible.
Yeah. And that's actually, I think, another interesting point is the way that we take pictures. I mean, I take pictures all the time.
Yeah.
And
we all,
how many pictures we all take that will never be seen again. And yet it's somehow it's an important part of, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's somehow is an important part of our interacting with something and saying yes to it and showing our love to it, in essence. And I like that idea more of like, what is showing up that you can identify that you love, that you have love and gratitude for, right? And can you then start gravitating towards what it is that's showing up? Let me love that, right? Not necessarily in the way of like, no matter what comes in, just love it, because
not like yes man.
Because I think there's situations, people, all sorts of things that I think it's important to say no to, but I think it's also important to find a way to say no to something lovingly, right? As opposed to the standard angry no.
Middle finger
right?
no.
The middle finger no.
Middle finger no,
right.
Which is, yeah. And well, it goes back, the whole thing about cell phone pictures. One, it was interesting because I didn't see a lot of it. I felt like at the country fair, there was a lot of people doing what you were doing. It seemed like there was a lot of people with that cell phone in their backpack because compared to a standard concert where everyone...
people were there.
People were
in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People just wanted to experience it. And that's what I think is tough with it, taking a picture of everything. I mean, Heidi does that sometimes where she's taking a picture of something we're watching and then there's like, there's a 1920 Stearman flying over.
Right.
That's an airplane, by the way. It's like you might be missing something. But not only that, I like the positive aspect of, when you're taking that picture, you're showing it love. That's really cool. But you're also not experiencing it the way we used to. You're not pulling that in.
That's what we're doing now, right? I mean, there's a piece of that you can say, it's not like the good old days. It's not like we were just experiencing and taking things in. Because there's been times in my life, certainly I've been like, wow, I wish I had a picture of that. I wish I had a picture of that memory, right? Wouldn't that be great to have a picture of that dude that I was on that train with in Turkey? Like, that would be
a selfie with that?
Awesome. That would be great. Selfie stick holding it out. No. But
like, what hard drive would that be on? I mean, could you find that picture?
Number 647.
Yeah, think about it.
Catalog number
if it went back that long.
Yeah. It's true. No doubt. Absolutely. But I actually do remember, this might be giving away way too much, but that's what we love in a podcast, right? I do remember the first picture I ever took with a phone. It was a flip phone. It was just poopy resolution. And
I forget about those pictures because they just were so bad. They were all deleted.
And I just thought it was such a bizarre thing. And so I remember the first picture I took, I had taken Mabel, my dog Mabel, for a walk, and she was pooping. And so the first picture I took was of my dog taking a crap. But
the first phone picture was a poopy picture.
Yeah, it was. It was a poopy picture.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I kind of always loved that, But there was something else we were going to say. But
sidetracking. That's good though. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing. You just have to, I think. Not make that all you're doing. Like, there's something wrong with taking pictures. When that becomes your whole, like, I really agree with that. If your whole concert experience is being seen through a 4-foot screen, and I literally see
4-inch screen, right?
4 foot. 4 foot would be better. But a 4-inch screen.
You got a pocket for that?
You're missing something.
Right.
You are missing something.
You're missing something. No doubt.
Come on. There are there's somebody who doesn't allow cell phones in his concert, and I think, dude, that's a little over the top. But I love it. You've got a really good point. And I can't remember. It's Jack White. Jack White does not allow them in. It's like, if you can't spend an hour and a half with me, then just don't bother.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And there's, that's like, okay, that's a little extreme. But I kind of get it. It's let's have this experience. Let's do this together, folks.
It's the same sort of thing in classical music. I mean, like, can you imagine going to see the Philharmonic and somebody's next to you, pulling out their cell phone, holding it up, filming the whole thing?
Right.
You wouldn't expect that.
Because, and it would really probably be annoying as hell.
And the beauty and the experience of actually getting into experiences, especially the one-off experiences, where it's just like, this is pretty much only happening now. Mm-hmm. Let me be here rather than in the rewind replay mentality.
Oh, exactly. Right. And I see this a lot. Like an extreme example is extreme sports, where you see people, they're skydiving for the first time,
right,
and they're filming it. And it's like, well, are you actually seeing what's going on here? Because if you open your eyes and look around, it's going to be a lot bigger than that phone, man. Like, come on.
Look at how close the ground's getting. Whoop.
So, yeah, all right. So I expect to hear from Apple any day now about that iPhone sponsorship, now that we've dissed,
of course,
looking at phones a little. Not entirely, though. Not entirely, which is, I like that. I think we've talked about both sides of everything.
Both sides of everything.
Everything.
Yeah, that's a good name for a podcast, man. I think that's...
I'm still shocked that the podcast that my name wasn't taken before, because it is the
from
best.
Both sides now.
Yeah, it'd be a good one.
Right.
You start one.
Who sang that?
And then Carly Simon.
Very good.
Oh, Mike, really?
Nice one.
Oh,
That's
I pulled
good.
that right out of my face.
I'm pretty certain.
That was...
I'm pretty certain.
Whew. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for playing Who Sang That?
Who sang that song?
We've been talking about 100100.
Oh my God! Wow, nice reference, Rush. Can you name the album? Okay, now we're geeking out way too much.
That's funny too. That Rush has become like the geek band.
That's right.
Okay, you like Rush? Oh, you're a geek. Okay, it's true. But
don't annoy us, brother. We have some work to do. Yes.
Yeah.
Forget about your silly ways.
All right. Well, we have been going an hour and a half now.
What?
No, we haven't.
We have but it kind of feels like it.
It's over an hour, which is cool.
Nice.
And the cool part of this is a couple things I got to say.
Down, right? You're going to edit all of this out, right?
Yeah. That's one thing I was getting to.
We didn't even talk about microdosing, really.
We didn't talk about microdosing. We didn't talk about your trip to France. We didn't talk about why you went to France.
God.
We will have to have your compadre on that went to France with you so that we can get into these crazy stories a little bit more, and he can edit it on the fly as we go along.
Yes.
No, don't talk about that.
Exactly. Don't talk
about
it.
Don't say that.
Can I just say that I am working with this guy, Bruce, who's a fantastic guy, on making this film about harpsichords, and in particular, this one harpsichord player. And if you don't know what a harpsichord is, Google it. It's a really cool instrument that predates the piano. Very important part of music history, important part of music. And we all love music, right? So it has its place in history, and it's going to be a fascinating film. Really.
It sounds like an amazing project. Yeah,
it's been an unbelievable experience, life lessons, and going to a part of the world and experiencing something that is centuries old. And I keep describing it as this incredibly deep crevasse. It's this niche of life that goes back centuries and yet remains contemporary.
Nearly as old as this castle.
Nearly as old as... Well, this castle's a little bit older, right? But, that's stained glass. Incredible. So it's an incredible project to be involved with. Bruce is a very talented, very smart scholar and musicologist and fantastic musician himself. And his ability to understand music and the relevance of particular instruments and the way that that's unfolded in different cultures is just, it's so impressive. He blows me away every time. So that's one very cool project that I'm involved with. I'm helping another friend of mine do a podcast right now.
Oh my God, that is so really cool. Really and cool. I mean, you've helped the whole way. I mean, in the early days when I was thinking of doing a podcast, it's like you helped me with just, I don't know, kind of trying it out, kind of seeing how it would go. And you also, Jon Griffin provides the music. So I wanted to thank you.
That's right.
That's right. I want to thank you very much. Not only for inviting me down to jam in your studio, which is where we came up with the original tracks for that jam.
That was cool,
yeah,
right?
That's me on drums.
And then you on drums.
That's me on drums. And then he sent me this just to say, look at this, man. This is this thing we did 7 years ago. And I said, really? Can I use it? I was like, yes, that is really perfect for this thought that I had about a little music rolling into the podcast. So thank you.
8, maybe even 8 years ago.
Well, it must be 8. Yeah, probably 8 years ago now.
I think it was 11.
And it was, it was literally just, let's try some stuff out. Playing your drum set.
Oh,
it's cool. Yeah, playing your drum set. And I think we were all, we worked on tuning it for a little bit. Mm-hmm. I showed you some tuning not secrets, and stuff like that. It was really fun. And then, but all the rest of it is John, all the other instruments, the mix, the not yet mastered, but all the all the other creativity, all the other creativity. So that, I'm really, that's really awesome that we did that. And, oh my gosh, that's so funny. I had a note written down for the intro, that I didn't get to at all. I was going to...
That we used to be in a band together?
Oh my God, no, I forgot about that. Right. Oh my God. Because that's not how we met. So, yeah.
It's not how we met.
Weren't we in a couple of bands together?
Well, yeah.
That was the same band?
Yeah, that was the same band, man.
It's the same band.
Wait a minute, man. This is the same tree.
I was going to warn people about language on the podcast. And now it's too late. Yeah, it's like, well, you listen to this much. I find it interesting that E on podcast means explicit. It doesn't mean everyone. It means explicit because E on the TV means everyone can listen to this, and everyone can listen to it. It's just some of you may be offended because of the language, because we use the how do you put that? We use the entirety of the English language, including the slang dictionary.
The slang urban dictionary is it's a very useful one to use.
It is.
FWIW.
FWIW. Yeah. Andrew Weil actually has some knows some stuff about what happens when you use foul language, or what we call cursing. We use a different part of our brain, which I think is very interesting. And it depends on what culture you're in when you use that, because, different words mean different things in different cultures. So, but
I think that's a good note to wrap it up, to go out on, is the elasticity of the brain, right? And the way that we can change, and how often you don't think somebody can change, or you can't change people. It's true. You can't change other people, but you can be an effective part of change within your own life. And this whole idea of brain and neuro elasticity, that you can actually change your brain chemistry, is, I think, a really exciting emerging science that supports changing the world and the life that for the direction that you want, for what you want to have happen. And those are your thoughts. Those are the way that your thoughts become things in the world, and actions, and how you live your life.
A very nice place to end. So thanks, Jon Griffin, for being on the show. This has been Were You Still Talking? With Joel Albrecht and Jon Griffin, and I will be back very soon. Thanks for listening. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate the people that are listening to this podcast. If you want to share it, that would be okay too, because the more I grow it, the longer I can do it. And yeah, I've had some fantastic support. Report? I've got no report cards. I've had some fantastic support from my own community and people I either don't talk to or rarely talk to. All the guests have a great time. So I'll be back again soon. Be good to each other.
Oh no, it's all right, let's do it all again. Here we go.